It will be a long video, but I am sure you will find the answers to the important questions in your mind. If we evaluate the word miracle from the perspective of the Quran, we see that it is used in different ways in terms of meaning and spelling. Miracle, to incapacitate. Verse, sign, miracle, evidence. In various verses, it is used as God's method of challenging, as, miracle, you cannot incapacitate, while in some verses, it is used as, our signs, our evidence, our miracles, in order to surprise those who are not convinced by the challenge. Their real meaning has nothing to do with spirituality. We live in the material world. We attributed the issues that our minds could not grasp and that we could not solve at that moment to spirituality, the unknown. However, everything definitely has an explanation. Our creators have coded into our DNA the standard instincts and abilities that will serve us in this material world. These are simple feelings and behaviors such as eating, drinking, reproduction, fear, love, pain, etc. Their development is possible by developing the brain, which has neuron networks. We have attributed to gods things that our brains cannot comprehend. Intelligent people who developed their minds exploited the ignorant people who could not develop their minds, used the talents they had for this colonial empire they established, calling it God's miracle or God's wrath, and spread fear in the world. They have the ancient knowledge of the intelligent people who had developed their brains before them. They passed this knowledge on to their descendants, the Israelites, and thus became superior to the world's. See Al-Baqarah 47. Since we were not aware of this information, we feared the gods who had this information and believed in their messengers' prophets. The kings, lords who possessed ancient knowledge were called great, supreme gods. They were all people like you and me, but smarter, stronger, and more talented. But none of them were eternal. They were not infinitely powerful, eternally living, infinitely merciful and infinitely knowledgeable as claimed, which is why they were discovered and defeated somewhere in some part of time. So when Nietzsche said, God is dead, I don't know if he was speaking metaphorically or literally, but rest assured, God is truly dead. Think. Why have prophets and verses stopped coming? Why are prayers not accepted? Why do wars and corruption not end? Why is there so much evil, and why do the wicked not receive their punishment immediately? Because the exiled ones have taken revenge for the war in heaven that was mentioned in the Bible. They now rule this world. I have explained this in my other videos. A God who is claimed to be eternal and everlasting cannot know that a being he created with his own hands would be ungrateful to him, and he learns this from his angels. And it is truly tragicomic that he tries to prove his existence to humanity by using his own messengers to make these ungrateful people, whom he created with his own hands, worship him, and by showing these ordinary people some evidence miracles. Because it is believed that a God who has infinite power, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and who says something to be, and it happens, resorts to such a simple and favoritist method. I'm sorry, but it's really terrible. Instead of doing these, shouldn't he have coded his knowledge of existence into our DNA, and all of humanity, without exception, should have believed in God? On the other hand, claiming that nature is full of miracles and that some people see them and believe in God, while others are too blind to see them, doesn't this show that God created us with deficiencies, flaws? To claim that some people can see these things shows that God has favored some of us over others. I have just given the verse proving this. How can a favoritist God be the most merciful creator of the universe? I'll leave it to you to decide. God is nothing more than an exaggerated father figure. Sigmund Freud. This is a statement we really need to take into consideration and think about. There was nothing miraculous about this life cycle, there never was. They created a kingdom of fear, submission using the ancient, superior knowledge they had. And they surrounded humanity with this circle of fear because it would be easier to gather people in a single center and rule them from that center. Events that seemed like miracles at the time are still possible today thanks to technology. For example, resurrecting the dead with electric shock, eye transplant surgery, fireproof asbestos clothes, earthquake and rain machines, etc. We can do these because some ancient knowledge has been deciphered, read the Revelation in the Bible, the Ezekiel chapters in the Torah. Of course, we couldn't have thought that our designers who placed us here would not give us the user manual of this place, but unfortunately this manual is in the hands of the bad, not the good sad face. As I just mentioned, we have DNA, genes that are designed to a certain standard, but it is also a fact that they are restricted. Scientist, author Greg Braden drew attention to this issue by saying, "Why does no one question that our DNA, which has 64 codons, is limited to 20 codons? If gods wanted to prove their existence to humans, they wouldn't need miracles, they would place their own evidence in our DNA, genes. Since they do not do this, it reveals the fact that they have no need to be known and that we are no different from simple, ordinary creatures. Since we do not have the guide, original testament that contains the knowledge of everything, we always attribute events to spirituality. However, the instincts we need in this material world we live in are in our DNA. There is no such thing as spirituality. Because there is a reality called death. It is absurd to talk about the soul or eternity in a place where there is death. If we were beings that lived forever, we could say that we have a soul. What we call the soul is information. Information is consciousness. It is contradictory, illogical to believe that the soul is both immortal and breathed by God. Because we have a reality called death, which is believed to be given by God. However, what we call death is actually a situation related to our DNA. Aging can be stopped or delayed with some modifications. You can search the internet for studies on this subject. It is written in the Quran and Torah that ancient people could live for 1,000 years. I have given details of these in my other videos. We understand from these stories that there was a genetic intervention in the past and that humans were limited. If the soul were the breath of God, why would he place it in a mortal body? Wouldn't it make more sense to be glorified by a human being who has eternal life? Wouldn't it be more pleasing to God to be worshipped forever? Also, if the soul were immortal, we would not be born with zero memory. We are all actually one. We all have the same DNA code. We are all simple codes. We all have the same instinct. This gene has been passed down from person to person for thousands of years. Transference is possible through incarnation, but this is not like reincarnation as we know it. This is a cycle of life. We take the essence of life from our Father and give it to our Son, and He continues this cycle. In other words, we actually continue to live in another body. Until our lineage dries up. We wake up in another time, another place, another body with zero memory, but over time the transferred genes show themselves and we start to do the things they do, like the things they like, and fear the things they fear. Some people may be telling the truth when they say, "In my previous life, I was such and such a person in such and such a place." We cannot know how many generations ago their ancestors' gene was active. Because there are examples of mass murder and sudden death that did not occur through natural means. Science calls the transfer of our abilities and habits, in addition to some of our physical characteristics, through genes as genetic inheritance. Unless we get rid of brain suppression, develop brain neurons and open the locked cells in our DNA, we will be born, grow up and die with standard instincts and information coded into our DNA. I can almost hear you asking how this is possible. Your brain acts like a processor and records all the information you have learned from your environment from infancy to old age into your DNA, or microdisc, and then this information is passed on to your offspring through reproduction. What you have learned from this stereotyped routine life is information that will help you keep yourself in the circle. Engage your imagination, travel, learn. Free your mind and get out of the circle. So, you know the truth, and the truth will make you free. John 8:32. The reason why the lifespan, which used to be long, is shortened may be to prevent this mental development. The brain that works longer will activate more information, and everyone who achieves this will become a god in time. Of course, this situation will not please the colonial gods. If we focus on reading and research, our brain develops and we can go beyond the standards set for our minds. You can find the video about this on my profile. That's why every person's IQ level is different. If all humans were to break free from this oppression and develop their minds to the level of Einstein, the world would be a very different place today. Or conversely, if humanity had never developed its mind, we would be living like cavemen today. What I mean is, we are the key. As I said at the beginning of the video, intelligent people who develop their minds exploit the ignorant masses who cannot. The end of part 1 has been reached. Please continue to part 2.